Good morning and welcome to the December 10th, 2020 meeting of Algonquin Highlands Council. I will ask the clerk to call the meeting to order. Sorry, I called the meeting to order. I'm asking the clerk for a roll call.
Councillor Berry?
Present.
Councillor Dayu?
Present.
Councillor Shortreed?
Present.
Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Present.
Mayor Moffat?
I am partially present, apparently. Before we move into the agenda, I just want to take a minute to talk about last night. We had our first ever virtual tree lighting, and by all reports, it was really well received, really well done, and I can see the smiles on councillors' faces on the screen. I just want to give some credit where credit is due. The idea came from recreation staff, so enormous thanks to Sandra Rogers and Chris Card for crafting the idea and organizing it. And can't say enough thanks to the staff that stayed after work and helped run the cameras and string the lights and do dry runs and organize, the guests and whatnot. It was marvelous. We had 70 people watching it live last night, and I'm told this morning that we've had 215 views of it to date, and I think that number is continuing to rise. So I think we may have created ourselves an annual event, and everybody did a good job. Firefighters were there as well. They provided some of the lighting, so well done all around. I think we definitely made lemonade out of lemons last night. So thank you for all of your part, and the staff, some of whom are sitting in the room here. Actually, all of you were here last night. So
And Santa.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
And Santa.
And Santa, yes. And the fact that his timing was perfect, and that Jen and Tom saw him, that was great.
Amazing.
Amazing. So anyway, thank you everybody for that. That was fabulous. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that the December 10th, 2020 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the previous meetings? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that the November 19th, 2020 regular meeting minutes and the November 26th, 2020 special meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? Carried, thank you. Number 6, public meetings, there are none. Number 7, delegations, we have 2. First delegation is County CAO and Clerk Mike Rudder, who's going to talk about housing targets and the implementation. So we're going to bring in Mr. Rudder. Good morning, Mr. Rudder.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's weird to have you on the screen here. But please take us through the report on housing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to provide an update on the Affordable Housing Targets program. I thought it might be useful to take a couple minutes at the beginning, and I promise I will try to stick to my time limit, but I thought it would be useful to go back and think about how we got here. It has been a fairly long process. It actually started, I guess it was first on County Council's radar in September of 2013 when the Poverty Reduction Strategy presented their housing action plan to County Council. And one of the recommendations in that action plan was to develop innovative policies that promote the development of affordable housing projects, such as incentives associated with development charges and permitting. So it seems like there was a gap in time, but in the interim, there was a housing and homelessness plan that was developed. There was an enumeration process that actually developed or created a by name wait list for housing. There was a lot of activity, but in June of 2017, County Council received a report outlining the process that was being undertaken by the City of Kawartha Lakes as our service manager to develop an affordable housing framework. They had retained a consultant who undertook a great deal of research on programs and incentives that other communities were using to encourage the development of affordable housing. And they reviewed those options with staff at 2 sessions in Haliburton County, so staff of the county and local municipalities, and those sessions were held in September of 2017. Important to note that there was also a session held with developers, builders, and other stakeholders. Those options were evaluated based on a number of criteria, but there was impact on affordability, cost of implementation, ease of implementation, impact on community type. There's different affordable housing that is incentives that are effective in serviced areas or rural areas or remote areas. So they wanted to evaluate them based on that. Looking at need for legislative change, suitability and sustainability, and whether they met municipal objectives. In December of 2017, Council received the results of that study and passed a resolution endorsing the framework for implementation as a tool to guide future work plans and budget submissions. Over the next 18 months, a number of foundational documents were prepared and updated. In June of 2019, County Council received a report titled From Housing Assets to Housing People Master Plan. And the objectives of that report were to assist the county and the city to address their affordable rental housing goals and targets, and plan for additional affordable housing, and finally to sustain the existing stock of housing assets. In September of 2019, County Council actually adopted formal targets for affordable units over the next 10 years. 3 options were presented. There was the status quo, looking at what we had invested over time. There was improvement, what would better look like, and then there was ideal. Ideal was defined as meeting the needs that have been modeled out over the next 10 years. So it is not a shot in the dark. It is actually based on a model of what our affordable housing needs and demands will be over the next decade. In our case, that demand is 750 affordable units. There's no doubt that we can't do that alone. We need nonprofits, we need the private sector to come along and get involved. And that's where we circle back, I guess, to the affordable housing framework that I referenced earlier. At the same meeting where County Council adopted those targets, they also passed an affordable housing incentives policy. And that included 33 possible municipal incentives, ranging from donated land at a reduced cost, waived building permit fees, those types of things. The final piece in the implementation happened on June 24th, 2020, when County Council received a report titled Affordable Housing Targets Program Implementation. And I'm happy to say there has been significant interest in this program. We held an information session at the Legion in Haliburton. I lose track of time. COVID has done that, but it was in the spring, I believe, before COVID, and we had incredible interest. We had booked the small room in the downstairs of the Legion, and there was no way we could fit everyone in there, so we moved upstairs, and it was a good-sized crowd even in that room. So there was a lot of interest, and those people, for the most part, were people who were interested in developing affordable housing in the county of Haliburton. So we were really excited when we saw that, and it really, I think we knew we were onto something. So the part of what was presented that day was the process for the Affordable Housing Targets Program and how people could access it. The city of Kawartha Lakes, as the service manager, has hired a service or a coordinator, I guess, for the program. It was initially set up to have 1 intake per year, but that is under review because shortly after the closing deadline, we had 2 or 3 groups express an interest, and we were really worried that those groups would lose momentum if they were asked to wait another year before they could submit a proposal. We do know that creates some budgeting challenges, but we think we can have enough runway that we can predict what will be required from a budgeting standpoint. When applications are received, they're vetted by the coordinator to make sure they qualify. Things like making sure their taxes are paid, making sure that the application is complete. And then it is reviewed by a technical committee that is made up of staff from the housing division at the City of Kawartha Lakes, the county, and local municipalities. And that review is really an assessment of zoning, building regulations, what will be required from a building code standpoint, laneways, drive entrances, those types of things, parking, and then a review of the types of incentives that are being requested, because every application could be different. Some might be asking for waiving building permit fees. Some might be asking for, a financial incentive from the county. So that review is undertaken by the technical committee. And then those applications are then referred to a steering committee, which is made up of housing staff and county staff. And the role of that steering committee is really to facilitate the applications, make sure that they're moving forward, and then developing recommendations that will be taken to each of our respective councils. It's really important to note that any incentive decision is made by the council of who has jurisdiction. So as examples, if they are requesting a financial incentive, then they would typically those come from the county, and that would be county council that make that decision. If they're asking for building permit fees to be waived, that's funded largely by the that's funded largely by the local municipality, and that would be a decision made by the local municipal council. What I've suggested to each of the CAOs is that I provided that list of 33 possible municipal incentives, and what I've suggested is that you take an opportunity now to review those possible incentives and see if they're things that you would be interested in providing. You may decide to that you would consider some and not others. For example, or there may be ways that you deal with it that would be specific to your local municipality. An example of this, and I know David Rogers would be happy that I mentioned this one, you may support waiving building permit fees, but since you fund the operation of your building department with those, you may set up another line item in your budget to actually repay the building department for those fees that have been waived. None of that is necessary. It's not necessary that you do the review, but I think it would be helpful for your staff if they had an idea of what the types of incentives that your council would consider when they come to those meetings and review applications. It would also ensure that you as a council are familiar with the suite of incentives so that you're prepared when you get those applications or those inevitable visits from myself or Hope Lee saying, we have an application that we'd like you to support and assist with. So that is, I guess, a review of the program, how we got here. That's how it is set up to work. We've had one intake. Unfortunately, I don't think there were any applications from Algonquin Highlands. There was significant interest. I think we had about 10 applications overall. Some during the review stage, they're not ready for one reason or another, but I know County Council and the local municipalities will be seeing a number of proposals in the coming months.
Thank you for that, Mike. A comprehensive overview, which is always appreciated. And you mentioned just at the end there about any applications from Algonquin Highlands. And we speak about this at the county table quite often. That one of our challenges in Algonquin Highlands is I often refer to us as a giant park. So we have half of the village of Dorset and a little bit of Carnarvon, and neither of those locations, which have the amenities required for affordable opportunities, there's no land there. So those challenges will remain until or unless some land becomes available, or Foxton Lake, it's a grocery store and a bank. So something has to change in order for us to expect, some of the kinds of developments that have been occurring in Minden Village, for example, which are providing all kinds of spaces. So we will keep our eye to the ground, and the program is an excellent one, and hopefully Algonquin Highlands will have an opportunity sometime in the future to be able to participate in it and create some housing through the program. Are there any questions for Mike Rutter from council members? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Not a question, but I just did want to say that I look forward to us having an opportunity to look at the possible incentives that we might offer and have a discussion about where we might land with those, should we be successful in getting somebody with interest in a development. And I honestly, I'm sorry, Mr. Rutter, but I feel honor bound to just raise the issue of inequity. That, you know, both Algonquin Highlands and Highlands East contribute faithfully to these housing projects. And I acknowledge that there there are residents from Algonquin Highlands that take advantage of the programs that we've got. But, you know, there is an inequity because neither one of those two smaller municipalities, or at least Algonquin Highlands, has not been successful, and yet we continue to contribute. Sorry.
Can I respond to that? I think.
Yes, you can, because, you know, I didn't say it yesterday, and I say it every time, that we're keeping track in Algonquin Highlands, and one day we're going to need the county's input, financial input on something here. So anyway, but please go ahead, Mike.
Well, and I certainly hope we'll be there for you. The nice thing about this program, I believe, is that it isn't just limited to those large scale developments that you see in Minden or you know, in Halliburton. I think there are secondary suite provisions, which I know there are appropriate places for those, and there are inappropriate places for those. But there are things like secondary suites. There are things like you know, there are other incentives in it. You know, some rent supplement and some other things that are options that we may consider, and that might be, there may be an uptake in Algonquin Highlands. There are, you know, I think it allows us to support not just multi-unit residential. It also allows us to support, you know, development of, you know, individual units. And so there is a large suite. And you mentioned Highlands East, and I believe there were 3 applications from Highlands East in the initial intake. Some planning stuff that would be, I think, a large scale. And others that are you know, the secondary suite in a home. So there are options inside the affordable housing target program. It is not just the 35 unit development that you saw yesterday at County Council. There are other options as well, and I think many of those could be really useful in Algonquin Highlands.
I agree, Mike. Thank you for that. And Councillor Dayu.
The secondary suite is a perfect segue into my question, Mike, which is about recipient accountability. And I was wondering, as I was reading through the report, whether you're aware of any means by which it can be confirmed that the ultimate resident in some of these spaces does in fact come from a low income family. I mean, I think about, for example, someone of means who applies for all of these benefits or subsidies, builds their secondary suite, and then rents it to their son at a reduced rate, which wouldn't be the purpose, obviously, behind the program. Do you have any thoughts about how the program at this stage is contemplating those sorts of conundrums?
I appreciate the question. I'm not the housing expert. I'll say that right now. So I will forward that question to our housing services manager. But I would say that in order to qualify for funding, there has to be a commitment, and it is an agreement with the service manager that says it will be provided, that unit will be provided at an affordable rate. And so that really establishes a rent limit. I'm not sure what other provisions are in there to protect against that kind of abuse, but I will follow up on that. If it is a rent supplement unit or something like that, then there is an income test every year. So that person has to show their income tax returns. They have to do that type of account, or have that kind of accountability. So there are mechanisms in place to ensure that doesn't happen if it is that type of incentive that's being utilized. But in terms of what specific safeguards are in place for that situation you described, I'm not 100% sure, but I will get that information back and I'll send it to your clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. It was a good one. Anything else for Mr. Rutter at the moment? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report? Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that Council receives a delegation from Mike Rutter, CAO Clerk, County of Haliburton regarding affordable housing targets, implementation, and information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Have a great Christmas.
You too. Next item is second delegation is Paisley McDowell from WSP for this year's voluntary septic inspection program. So a little bit of a different year. Good morning, Paisley.
Good morning.
Nice to have you back. I was just saying about a very, very different year at being voluntary. So take us through your presentation and tell us what you learned.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Is there supposed to be a requirement of me sharing my screen, or do you guys all have a copy of the presentation?
We have it. Would you like to share your screen?
I can.
Can she share her screen? We don't know if we can do that here.
I have it on my screen.
Like we all possess the presentation, so
Okay.
IT is coming across the floor. If it's more than one step, we can just follow along on our own.
Yeah.
There's some very wise nodding occurring, so I suspect something's going to happen. Okay, nope, we are not going to screen share. Apologies for that technological delay. We will follow along, Paisley, so please take us through it.
Perfect. Okay, so quick overview. We're going to do background of the program, of course, the COVID-19 changes, and then some results and discussion. So as per usual, the program objectives are to be inspecting class 1 through 5 septic systems. The township is zoned. So this year we were looking at our zone C, which in our picture on the side is the big green section. We're generally looking for compliance to section 8.9 of the Ontario Building Code. A large emphasis in the program is public education. That's throughout the entirety of it. So the letters that get sent out to the homeowners during phone calls or emails, during the actual inspection, and then the report that comes afterwards. And the ultimate goal is to protect lake health, drinking water resources, public health, and the environment. So the COVID-19 changes, as you mentioned, it was a voluntary program. So I can just speak a little bit about that meant. So typically we have 2 phases of booking inspections. Phase 1 is we send a letter to all homeowners, say, please contact us by the deadline, typically about 4 to 5 weeks, to book an inspection. After that deadline has passed, any homeowner who has not booked an inspection yet, we send a follow-up letter that says you have been assigned a date and time, be prepared for your inspection. If you cannot attend, please reach out to us so we can rebook the inspection. So because of COVID-19, that phase 2 did not happen. And it was clearly outlined in our letter, which is being shown on the slide here, that was stating that it was voluntary only. Anyone who did not want to do an inspection in 2020 was just going to be shifted to 2021. And there was going to be no questions asked about the reason that they chose to do that. So this did result in a significantly smaller program. So we had 71% of the total properties that were meant to be inspected this year moved into the future. So before I go into results and discussion, just kind of a disclaimer here, because we had a very small program, only 29% of people participating, we're kind of treating this as an interim report and an interim presentation. So a full detailed discussion and analysis will be completed next year once we can kind of equalize and distribute the results across the whole zone rather than just the people who volunteered to have it this year. So still the summary from this year, we had 314 inspections that WSP did, plus 1 third-party inspection. So a total of 315, which is that 29%. We did have 765 properties that were meant for this year that got moved into the future. And we have 24 properties that are still being pulled through from past zones. So that number was a little bit higher. We were able to get a few Zone A and Zone B, so 2018 and 2019 properties done this year, but we still have these remaining 24, which again are going to continue to be carried forward until it can be completed. So generally the type of systems, I'll talk a little bit about the analysis of how it kind of compared to last year, but quickly we had 31% with outhouses, class 1 systems, and then as expected, 53% for class 4 systems. On the side, I note specifically that we had 53% this year compared to 66 in 2019. We had spoken about it last year at Township Council meeting that we expect there to be more class 1 and class 2 systems in the future years because we were getting into more of the northern area, more water access only properties. So this is in line with what we expected to see. And just noting here that when you see these percentages and when I talk about the remaining features or details here, we're talking about per system. So we actually inspected 479 systems across the 315 properties. So for the results of this year, we were very similar total percentage of remedial actions this year compared to last year. So we're sitting at 32% of systems had an identified code contravention compared to 31 for 2019. So very similar. And again, as we have always done, remedial actions are reported per system. So if a system has a remedial action, it gets identified here and counts in the total count. But one system can have multiple remedial actions, and that still just gets counted as a single system. So for example, a class 4 septic tank could have a pump out required plus a cracked tank lid. So looking a little more into the actual remedial actions, and this is where I'm going to pull in a little bit more of the 2019 data just to compare. So we had 6% of systems requiring solid pump out, which is significantly less than past years. So for example, in 2019, that was at 14%. So as I said before, the total number of remedial actions is very similar, but the type of remedial action was quite different. And again, that does speak to a little more of the use of the area compared to the past areas and the density. So similarly, well, conversely, actually, we had 14% remedial actions for trees, bushes, roots, vegetation on the bed, compared to only 6% last year. So again, that's a decent difference compared to last year's results. The remainder of them are pretty similar to past years, so I'll just touch on them quickly. So cracked, broken tank lids, only 3%, haulage agreement, 39, metal septic tank lids, less than 1. So we had one class 4 that had a metal tank. That's actually pictured on the side. And as we always see with metal tanks, they are super thin and there's often no lid. It's already degraded and fallen into the tank. Specifically for metal tanks, we had approximately half of the metal tanks this year compared to 2019, which was half of what we saw in 2018. So we're getting through the metal tanks and getting them out of the township. A possible reason for these kind of continual decrease is that there is a lot more information about having these metal tanks removed and kind of avoiding the inspection. So WSP doesn't necessarily see the metal tank because we talk to homeowners ahead of time and say, if you have one, apply for a permit, get the metal tank dealt with so you don't have to go through the inspection with us. So outhouse pits, 25%. And then I added in the class 2 note here. I'm going to talk a little more about that in a few slides, so I won't go into too much. So specifically for the class 1 and 2s, we, as expected, had a higher percentage of properties with class 1 and 2s compared to 2019 and 2018, because we had a lot more water access only properties, and about 1/3 of water access only properties had a class 1 and or 1 and 2 as their primary servicing. So a note here that we have a doubled percentage of class 2s that were illegally discharged. So when we say illegally discharged, That picture on the bottom corner is a great one for that. That is homeowners who have an outhouse. A lot of them don't necessarily have full running water, but they're still washing their hands or still washing dishes. And this is just a clear sign of the place that they commonly dump their gray water and leaving evidence there. So not all of the discharges are this exact situation, but this definitely was a very common one that we saw. And then kind of just comparing the overarching number of class 1 and 2s that we saw, it was 42% total in 2019. Sorry, 42 in 2020 compared to 26 in 2019. So that is that significant increase in class 1s and class 2s seen. The other picture for gray water is, I guess, a similar kind of not functioning gray water system. This one is actually just sitting completely full, and the owner had indicated that it always is in that situation, which is not how class 2 systems should be functioning. So that would be another, I'd say, more common incident that we saw with class 2s. So brief summary, we had 479 systems inspected across the 315 properties between July and October. So again, that inspection window was a little bit shifted later in the year start because of all the COVID planning that we had to do at the beginning. And then participation in the program was at 29%. 32% of properties had the visible code contraventions and the one metal septic tank that we saw. Looking at what's left for this program, so this would have been about the 50% mark, well, a little bit past it, I suppose. We're still sitting a little bit closer to the 50% mark because we were only able to get 29% of the properties done. So we have 24 properties from zone A and B to get through and 765 from zone C. And then D, is our future zone that has not been reached out to at all at this point. It was meant to be for a next year zone. So that was focusing around the Coagma, Fletcher, Livingstone, Kimball Lakes. And a note again about the metal tanks, we will continue to include clear direction in our letters that state that any metal tanks will need to be replaced and they can apply for a permit ahead of time to avoid an inspection. And that would be the end of my brief overview here. So any questions, comments?
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, it is a much smaller program for sure. I have a question. You say there's 24 properties left from zones A and B. Is that because they have not yet been inspected or follow-up action has not been undertaken?
So that means that they have not been inspected. So there were a few properties that kind of weren't noted initially when that zone happened. So they've been collected now and all the data has been updated between WSP and the township. But the majority of them, we have attempted to reach out to these homeowners year after year and have been able to unsuccessfully complete inspection. So anyone that we attempted to do an inspection in 2018 or 2019, we would have sent that follow-up letter. We would have assigned them a date, gone to the property and not been able to complete an inspection because a homeowner wasn't there or the system was not prepared. So the plans to address those, I know it's been discussed with the township, and the kind of next steps were put on a little bit of a hold this year because of COVID, but there are plans to pick away at that 24 and make sure that it does get completed.
I would hope so. Yeah, that's good news to hear. I just had another couple of comments, but I'll go to council for any questions or thoughts. Councillor Dayu.
I've got two questions. The first one is, I think, the obvious one. Paisley, what are your thoughts on the workload for next year? Are you going to be able to incorporate all of these additional site visits into a single season, or do you foresee this continuing on for yet another year? And after that, I've got another question.
Sure. So our kind of overarching contract and the initial proposal was a 5 years. We did zone it into 4 in order to get it completed as quick as possible and leave that last year as an open year to catch any properties that hadn't been done. So we do have that time frame in there. That is still further discussions that we're going to be having with township staff to confirm kind of exactly how we're going to be looking at those next 2 years. Because yes, we will have an additional essentially 800 that didn't get completed this year, and that'll be about 1,800 properties scheduled in theory for next year, and then the 2022 is our carry forward. So I'd say it's a to be confirmed and a discussion between WSP and the township.
Great, thank you. Other questions from members of council? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Paisley, you mentioned that the ones that are still quite outstanding, that we're going to pick away at them. I'm just wondering if at some point there isn't an action beyond just picking away, and what that might look like.
Yeah, so I didn't want to touch on it too much because it's coming from township, but there was discussion about kind of more enforcement and potentially orders going towards those properties. So again, that's coming from the building department and not from WSP. So from our side, we follow the direction from the building department, and we're sending out the letters after their review and with the wording that we kind of mutually agree upon. So they do have more kind of tools and options, and that was discussed, just put on hold for 2020. And I just don't know what the finalized plan for 2021 is.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll leave that with staff, considering 2020 was the year it's been, and we'll ask the CAO to circle back on that and keep us up to date with what the plan is. Councillor Berry.
Hi, Paisley. Last year when you gave the presentation, there was, I believe you did some water samples in certain areas, and you had a map that sort of showed sort of warm and hot areas. I just wonder, was there any of that work done this year?
So because of COVID, we didn't have control of which properties were going to have the inspection. We just had to wait for someone to contact us, and then we would be able to book them. So we did consistently monitor as we were booking inspections in 2020 to make sure that we didn't complete a certain area or a certain lake, because the research program, we do want to go in with as kind of unbiased start as possible. So we try to take samples about every 10 properties, and they're randomly selected. And not that any results are correlated to a specific property, but just in terms of accessing the surface water to take that sample. So we wanted to ensure that we didn't kind of block out any area and miss it, but that was not the case. We had decently even distribution for properties that were kind of opting to do it this year versus the ones that were going to be carried forward. So we put a hold on the results, the collection of the samples this year, as we couldn't really plan that ahead of time. And we have it in our plan for next year to be able to get that even distribution and to be able to actually analyze the results and have valuable outcomes and hopefully conclusions in that, and to continue to build on the research that was done in 2018 and 2019.
Great. Councillor Dayu.
This is a question that actually relates to Councillor Berry's question. The one topic that you've touched on in previous presentations is remedial action, and how we can't assume that every letter sent out means that there's been a huge abuse and that what has to be done is going to be transformative to the local environment. It could be something as simple as a cracked lid that has to be replaced, or it could be as something as big as removing the metal tank or cleaning up illegal discharge, etc. So my question is, do you think that by the end of the program, there will be a way to quantify somehow remedial action impact on lake health, riparian zone, etc.? Can we sort the wheat from the chaff, get the cracked lids over to one side and sort of focus on what the impact is specifically of those remedial actions? Or is that pushing science a little too far for the scope of our project?
So we do attempt to do that the best we can kind of throughout the program, and once we get to the end is when we can really do an overarching assessment of that. So we do that through a risk assessment, which again, we weren't really able to do a risk assessment this year and present maps in the same way, partially just from a privacy standpoint. The maps do show hot zones, and because we had such a limited number of properties this year, we didn't necessarily want to present any maps that could expose potential areas because we had such limited people. So through that risk analysis, and we compare it to the phosphorus samples that we've taken, and you guys would have seen those maps in the past years, that is kind of taking into account the type of remedial action, okay, and how the more severe ones in terms of the metal tanks or the tanks that are overflowing that we actively see, commonly related to pumps that are failing at the time. How those kind of have a bigger impact compared to, as you said, a cracked lid or a routine pump out that just had not taken place and will be shortly after the inspection. So that will come through by the end when we do the risk assessment.
Okay, that's really helpful, because it's great to know what what those health maps look like. But in terms of taxpayer accountability for us, we also want to be able to show that it's because of some of these remedial actions that we are that we are seeing these increased health levels in riparian zone and lake health. So that's great that tie can be made. It's not just a general mapping. Yeah.
Yes.
And we also need to be careful, though, by not being too detailed and providing any privacy violations in terms of too finite an identification process.
Yeah.
So there's a little balance in there as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, that will be all good information to have. Anything further from Paisley on this year's inspection program? Okay, then I will ask for a mover and a seconder to receive the report. Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be resolved, Council received a delegation from Paisley McDowell from WSP regarding the 2020 septic re-inspection program results as information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Paisley. We'll see you again.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care. Next up, number 8 is building and bylaw enforcement business. So we'll bring in Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is, I know where Mr. Rogers is. We'll bring in Mr. Moore. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and members of council. I am pleased this morning to represent the building bylaw monthly activities report that was respectfully submitted by Mr. David Rogers.
And is there anything on there that has any more excitement attached to it beyond what we've read?
There is not.
What? Well, it's nice to see the construction value is as high as it is. We always like to point at that. I mean, things are busy. We know people are building. There's more construction going on right now than there normally is in November. So November, December. So does anybody have any questions of Greg for this particular report? No. Sorry, Greg. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Barry, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of building bylaw report BLDG 1920 regarding monthly activities for the month of November 2020, submitted by David Rogers and dated December 10th, 2020.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you.
Next up is Parks, Rec and Trails business, and we'll bring in Mr. Card. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So this stems back to one of our big picture list discussions that we had in October, and trying to formulate a way to move ahead with how we manage docks and landings. We now have our asset management plan, so we know that we have a set of marching orders in terms of infrastructure needs, and but we had also asked for the provision of, and I had asked for in October, at our October meeting, a sort of a provision of a framework within which decisions can be made. And so you have given this an awful lot of thought, and you're going to take us through your report.
Yes, thank you. So just to start out, I'm here as I've the information from the various discussions that we've had and some of the lessons that we've learned from recent projects and compiled it. And we've had a number of discussions internally between the CAO and myself and involved staff, and with council input based on the previous meeting. This is looking at essentially what the direction was that we hope to achieve, but highlighting a couple of different options, well, 3 different options how to move forward. It is still a very big discussion that at this point in time, I'd like to decipher which direction we're going to take it, because it has a number of kind of budget implications and staffing implications for the very near future. I'm going to start out with just under discussion. If I could, I've the points that are what I took away from that discussion during that big picture council meeting. And I'd ask anybody would suggest need to be in there before we move ahead.
Chris, you're freezing up a little bit.
Try putting my, hold on. Am I okay now?
Yes?
Okay, so just before we move past the summary of points discussed at the October 1st meeting, is there any points, if I may ask if there's any points that anybody feels on into the considerations for how we'll move forward based on the options? And I look at this as an opportunity to highlight those points that will then inform those options that then I'll bring back to council afterwards.
Sorry, Chris, are you asking if the summary, if anybody wants to talk about any of the summary points contained in your report?
That's right. Are there any points that should be added to that summary?
That's a pretty big, long list. Lisa Barry.
I just wanted to say I feel you did a great job coming up with the list, and I think it reflects what council discussed perfectly.
I agree with you. I think it perfectly captures the many moving parts of this discussion from October today and going forward. So it'll be very interesting. So Chris, I think you're hearing concurrence that the list is an accurate representation of the last discussion. So let's move into options.
Great. So I present three options, and if I could go through each one briefly, and then we get into bylaw, if we can have a discussion about each of those options. So option one, of course, is always to continue as is. And this would essentially mean that what's been identified in the asset management plan would be replaced like for like. I've listed pros and cons for each of the options, and of course, replacing like for like would certainly be time and cost effective. It would be very predictable. Historical uses could continue as is, but it'd limit our flexibility, and it's not going to address any of the issues we've identified, such as the need to facilitate a growing demand in some situations, and also and other situations where we can anticipate that there will be a future need for increased capacity. The second option would be to create a comprehensive plan that addresses all of the factors we've identified now, looks at all of the landings as a whole, and over the next year, comes up with a plan in conjunction with a consultant that would give us a go forward for all of the landings. The challenge with this is that there's significant budget implications up front. It may overall and on paper look like the best option, but when considering things like the fact that there's a number of locations that we don't have property surveys on, just as a single example, we'd anticipate that just going through the property survey phase in the next year could be, it would be a significant cost to this year's budget. On top of that, it would compete with existing priorities, and we'd have to look at either shifting our priorities for other places in the department, and which isn't advisable, and instead we'd have to look at retaining a staff member essentially to oversee the development of that framework in conjunction with a consultant over the next year. So costs associated with staffing, consulting, the time associated with that. But at the end, we would have a plan that gives us direction over the foreseeable future, which gives us an idea of cost for where we want to land on those projects. But the challenge with that is, aside from the budgeting and the staff, is that it wouldn't allow us to flex down the road necessarily without revisiting those items, such as coming up with a plan now. Once we get to actually implementing that on location at some landings in 10, 12, 15 years from now, we may need to reconsider those options anyways.
Chris, we've lost you completely now. Chris, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear.
You suddenly
Can
just
you hear
went.
me?
Yeah, I can now, but you suddenly went mute, so we didn't hear your last sentence.
How's that?
Well, we'll know in a minute or so.
Okay, so where I was going is essentially, there hasn't historically been the development of reserve funds that would match improvement initiatives on any landings. And what I've looked at in pros and cons for the next two approaches is the ability to predict those. And the one benefit of an overarching plan is we're going to be able to predict costs long term and then be able to build reserve funds to support those. But we'd have a lot of cost up front. So it'd be more predictable, but higher cost up front. The final option, which is what, as a staff, myself and in consultation with the CAO, feel is the best approach, and is also a similar framework to what an overarching approach would need to include, except in this phased approach, we would do it as the projects arise. So we look at the asset management plan, and as each project comes up, we look at all of the input that would be developed in a framework that would inform a decision for that location. And what I'd like to be able to do next is develop that framework. And then as each project comes up, then we would look at all of the parameters that I've listed there and go through the property surveys and go through the information gathering phase, where we're filling in information gaps through questionnaires and things like that, understanding water levels, uses, all of those things. And then I would use that to develop a recommendation to council on each landing as it comes up. The pros with that is it's going to fit within existing staffing, it's going to fit within existing budgets, competing priorities, etc. The con is that we won't know what's going to happen at a landing until that landing comes up. So that's to say, in areas where we know there's existing issues, we're going to, potentially, we're going to have a time that we won't be able to have a solid understanding of how we're going to approach that until it comes, which would also factor into the building of reserve funding to support that. We would have to predict it the best that we could to be able to develop those reserves and then implement that project at that time. After all of that, I would then suggest we'd look at the bylaw and go through a similar process with the bylaw. So what I'd like to do now is get council's thoughts on the options and look at any questions or anything that may also need to be looked at within those options. And ultimately from this, I hope to be able to leave here with an idea of what I would bring back at a future council meeting to start moving this forward, and how that would look for option 3, which is the recommended option. Is I would go away, I'd start developing the framework, I'd bring the framework back to council, which would include all of the parameters and how we would go through the decision-making process for each project as it comes up, get feedback from council, finalize that, and then roll it out. So that's the overview, and I'll put it back to you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think I'll just start at the top and put your hand up if you're interested in option 1. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious where we're going. Put your hand up if you're interested in option 2. So it looks like Councillor Dayu, you're on mute.
Yeah, I am. I completely understand the argument that not might be the best decision, but I have to say I am really interested in the option. You know, the idea during our previous conversation about docks and landings was, is it possible to generate an overview picture so that we can ensure that we're making equitable decisions as we go along? So I guess my key question would be, is there any way to marry that intention with option 3? Because I agree with staff. I think option 3 is the logical way to go for a whole bunch of reasons. So how can we bring that overall intention into option 3, if at all?
I believe Madam CAO is going to tell you how that's going to happen.
Thank you. Yes, we staff did talk about that, and one of the things that we talked about is how do we bring all of the information together if council does choose option 3? And what we talked about was, as each project happens each year, so say this year for Skin Lake, the information gathering will happen, a survey will happen of the property, and that information then will be logged. And each time we do a project, the information will be logged. So we are gathering essentially a docks and landings plan as we go along. It's just not happening all at once. That was our thought on it.
Yeah.
So we get there kind of eventually as the projects come up through the asset management plan. I mean, we want to make sure we've spent a lot of money and waited an awfully long time for an asset management plan. And so it speaks to a very significant and large portion of next steps around these assets. What's missing is the whether it's like for like or modifications or upgrading. I think anybody listening to the conversation might think it sounds like Algonquin Highlands plans to invest millions of dollars and give everybody their favorite kitten. And at that's I don't believe that's accurate. What I am looking for is, and was looking for in October, was where council decides what the, for lack of a better word, check boxes are. So we say we want this information, that staff then take away and do the work they're paid to do, and come back and say it's our recommendation that we do this at this location based on the framework that was decided. Because we also need to make sure that we don't end up individually reviewing every one of these projects on their own merit. They have to be, there has to be a framework within which those big decisions are made. Otherwise, it'll just be a dog's breakfast. So the example that I can think of is, it's a much lesser example, was, for years council would receive individual letters from people saying, we're a community group and we want to put on an event, and will you please waive our fees? And council ended up having to, judge each of those requests on the merits of the organization and, how good their letter was. And it was all a little bit awkward, and councils shouldn't be making those decisions. So we asked staff to come back with a framework within which those decisions are made. So council provided the philosophical direction for policy to be developed. And so council no longer sees those decisions or has to get involved in the weeds of weighing the pros and cons of who gets to their fees waived for the use of a recreation center for a community event. And so similarly, and yet different at the same time, we need a framework where council says these 10 things are important in making the decision. And then staff would then weigh them in conjunction, complementary to the asset management plan, and then come back and say, well, you guys said you were interested in, safety and, I'm making it up, hand railings and porch lights and whatever they are. And then Chris would come back and say, the next project up is such and such a location, and it checks off all the criteria. So I'm recommending that we move this in this direction for this project. So the framework, working on the framework is the most important part. It's all the work at the front end that then allows the machinations inside by staff who have the knowledge, the on the ground knowledge and expertise to then output the recommendations at the other end. So that's sort of generally where it would put the control of the overall decision making, the direction in the hands of council, which is where it lives. But the internal machinations of how we get to any outputs or recommended outputs would happen inside that process by staff. So that's sort of the plan. But let me just go. So generally, Jen, does that answer your question? And I'm assuming from that we're going for option 3, right?
It doesn't specifically answer the question. It certainly offers a lot of very good information that I'm grateful to receive. But your comments are more depth comments, how we drill down on each particular lake and make sure that we're making good decisions for that lake. And my fear is that we without the width conversation, without the breadth conversation, we might get into a moment where we use up all of our reserves on Lake X that has 4 water access only cottages on it and needs a like for, or it looks like a like for like replacement of facilities is appropriate. And then there are no reserves left for Lake Z that has 58 water access cottages on it and they don't have any facilities, but we didn't clock that in advance when we were making the Lake Y decision because we didn't have that overall overview. So I understand better now how this will help to regulate good decision making on a lake per lake basis. But I guess my question remains: is there a way to maybe use the asset management plan to even have a crystal ball approach so that we have a general sense of what might what we might be looking at in the future in terms of these equitable decisions, so that we're not caught off guard in that sense? Or are there any, do staff think that there are any indicators that we could develop in the framework that could be fairly easily and at low cost be pre-peopled with information, so that we're always looking a little bit at the width, even though we can't complete the width before we drill down to each lake?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think part of me thinks, like, first of all, some of the width is not as easy as one might think. Staff are really already really busy. I think that I would hope that we each and all have enough knowledge of our own communities and needs that we would be able to bring some of that to the table in terms of developing the framework. It doesn't mean council's wouldn't have any participation or any decision or modification ability. It means that staff would do the heavy lifting, which is what they're supposed to do. And in terms of how people are engaged or what questions they're asked, we also need to ensure, again, I think I've moved right back to the drilling down, but we need to make sure that we use the asset management plan.
Yeah.
So it tells us very clearly what's red, what's orange, what's green. So those projects will come forward. We need to figure out the decision-making process for what we're going to do at those sites. Because if the asset management plan, to your point, says it's going to cost you X amount of dollars to replace like with like, our job is to find a way to determine if we're actually going to do like with like. This is not necessarily looking at doing more and bigger and better. In some cases, it might be right sizing. In some places, there is historically infrastructure that is overbuilt or too big for the users. And there are other places where there is infrastructure that is simply not keeping up with the increased number of users as the community is changing. So that's what Chris is looking for, and that's what he wants to bring back is and I think that would be a really long discussion, is how do we get this right so that we don't have 800 people emailing council saying, do my dock, do my boat launch, what's wrong with this? There has to be a process where if there's communication with the lake president to say, do you have beaver dams that affect your water levels? You know what I'm talking about there. Just to get some very basic inputs. We also need to make sure that, you know, it's the job of us it's our job to make decisions. It's the job of ward councillors to bring their constituents' voice to the table. And we need to make sure that the process is so clearly laid out that we don't end up having a referendum on every dock and landing decision. Because if we have to make sure we ask some questions of the users, but if you ask every user of every dock and landing what they want, we'll be building lots of things. So anyway, I mean, this is the way forward, I guess, but still looking for, you know, other thoughts about moving. What do you want to do with this? For Chris to know what to do next. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I've got a few points to make, so if bear with me. I do like the idea of option number 3, Chris. I think it might be the most sustainable financially, and I agree that we do need some kind of framework to help us, you know, with this process going along. You know, with respect to each individual location, I do think that as we go through the projects, we need to ensure 2 things: that who owns the property, that in fact it is on property that belongs to us, and possibly require a survey if it's deemed to be necessary. I wonder about, you know, looking at the use and the cost of additional staff or consultants, whether there's been any consideration given to, say, the use of summer students to do some of this work, or possibly U-Links. You know, it might be a project that they could do, and a way for us to have a partnership and share a bit of money, not money, share a bit of the workload and save some money. You know, we really do need to have some mechanism to ensure that there's equity across the board. You know, as I think, as Carol said, right sizing in places where we need to, and looking at additional or increased facilities in other places. I'm wondering, I really, and I'm going to get shot for this, but I really am concerned about the idea of using a questionnaire, asking everybody what they want, because everyone cannot have a puppy. And I think that, you know, a questionnaire just could possibly create expectations that we will not be able to meet. And that worries me. You know, I'm hoping that there's a mechanism like contact with a Lake Association president or a Lake steward, because I think what we most need to have is specific information about the lake and any peculiarities that might impact the structure that we're considering. You know, I'm really nervous about the idea of surveys. You know, I just think that can take us somewhere where you know, beyond our control. And I think that might be about it. I'm not sure that helps, except that I do support option 3. And that, you know, we may need to, you know, considering some of Jen's concerns, there be a little bit of overlap between 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with you completely about the being a bit nervous with things like in the report questionnaires and surveys, because it's like I said, every project isn't a referendum. And so that's why it's important for us to have the conversation to create the framework within which the tick boxes or the measurements are defined and established, so that the decisions are being made for the right reasons, and not so that everybody, you know, gets a private dock and gazebo. Councillor Dayu.
I do understand the point about surveys very much, but I also fully trust our staff to not design it in such a way that we're asking them to tell us stuff that we would never be able to achieve. Surveys can be used in any number of ways, and a lot of it is about information and context gathering rather than a what do you want or how would you like to see this designed. Those questions don't have to come in at all. And I do trust staff to be able to figure out how to build the survey so that we're not constructing those expectations, and we're also getting all the information we need so that council and staff can come to a good decision.
Yeah, and I agree with both you and Liz, and I think it's important to find the appropriate point person. I wouldn't support surveying every user of a boat launch, because first of all, you'd never find them. And you also, likewise, you wouldn't survey every property owner on a lake. Well, that's the whole point of the framework, is to do exactly that, Jen, is to figure out what needs to be asked, for what reasons, and how that information is garnered from that body of people, to make it as smooth as possible. So yeah, I agree that with Liz, we just need to be very careful that everybody doesn't get to check a box of what they want at their docking point or landing point, because we would never be able to afford what everybody would want. Can we just, are the ideas on page 4, is there anything on there that, I think we've talked a little bit about questionnaire survey, what we're kind of looking for. Are those the kinds of things that you want Chris to consider in bringing back some sort of draft framework? Keeping in mind that, even going as far as surveys, we need to be prepared that if we survey a landing and it's not our land, or people have their boats on someone else's land, what are we going to do about it? So we also need to be careful about not setting ourselves up, as Liz has said, for false expectations or unrealistic or unfinanceable expectations. But it's all good information to have going forward. Liz?
Well, I guess there's surveys and there are surveys. And when I was talking about doing surveys where it's deemed necessary, I meant physically surveying the land, not surveying the people.
Okay.
Because I think we will find in some instances that we're not on our own land, that we're crossing over onto Crown land or God forbid, private land. So, I do see that there will be some of those kinds of surveys that will be required.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question approaching this for the future of the community is a huge job, huge project. And I think it can complement, it can dovetail with the asset management plan. The asset management plan will be the lead document, and we're going to figure out how to complement it on the other side. Liz, go ahead.
One more question of Chris, and this is kind of a budget question. I don't want to create any expectations or set anything up, but when you talk about the need for additional staff with respect to this project, is that over and above your ongoing pressures in your department for the need for extra help? Are you talking about, like, is this another person, or would this be part of that?
This would be another person, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We do anticipate, and that would we only anticipate that would be required if we wanted to go with option 2 as an overarching approach at this time.
Okay.
Okay, Chris, so option 3, the sort of the hybrid model is the phased approach is receiving support, and I think you've heard some conversation. Lisa Berry and Julia Shortreed, did you want to offer anything into Chris's next steps? Lisa, go ahead.
I agree with, excellent conversation. I do feel that I totally support option 3. I do like the idea of a framework. I think that the fact that we just had the org review, or not the org review, sorry, the asset management, it does give us a framework to some extent. So we're not shooting in the dark. I think we do have a bit of a plan. The one thing I'd like to see is as the projects are completed, it would be nice to see sort of the long-term estimation of what will happen next, either with the infrastructure that's being replaced with like or with unlike, and future expectations with growing people on the lakes and that type of thing.
And Julie, did you want to weigh in at all?
Sorry, yes, sorry. I agree with option 3. I think we definitely need a framework so that we can make pertinent decisions for each lake. I think at the end, we'll do what's right for individual lakes, not doing the same thing for everyone.
Yeah, lots of considerations there. And just a reminder too, in preparation for the meeting we had in October, members of council were emailed a map of where all our docks and landings are. And hopefully you spent your COVID driving days looking at them all. But if you haven't, just keep in mind that if you're out and about, you know, make sure that you drive, like go the long way around or stop and have a look or go for a little day drive and have a look at what they are, so that when we do start talking about them, you'll know exactly what they, I'm sure that, you know, we maybe not everybody has seen all of them. So if you can do that, that would be great. Chris, do you have enough to move forward with?
I do, yeah, and this is the exact kind of feedback that I was looking for. Everybody's made some very great points, and I'm going to take that away and start developing a framework. And it may be, you know, 1 or 2 discussions to finalize that framework, but I have what I need at this time to get it started. And to your point about looking at landings, keep in mind that as winter approaches, for the most part, we don't do winter maintenance on landings. So if you are going to go in the winter, you'd expect you'd have to wear your boots for walking in deep snow.
That's good advice. Maybe wait till the spring.
Wait till spring was the translation.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Councillor Dayu.
I wonder if Mr. Card would offer a couple more words about the bylaw review process, because as you know, as you pointed out, Chris, it's hard to create a bylaw that really works for everyone when we don't have all the information about what everyone is doing. And do you have any more thoughts on how to align that timeline if we're going to be using option 3?
I think ultimately that we work through this framework, and then that will advise the direction that we need to go with the bylaw. We've already identified that the bylaw as it exists right now does not match existing and historical use. And as we develop the framework, finalize that, and then get back into the bylaw to align that with how the framework would approach those things, okay, if that makes sense. But a large part of it is just, you know, just the property boundaries as an example, as far as the bylaws go. When we're talking about boat storage on shorelines, I don't have the ability right now to decipher whether or not a boat being stored is on our property, on Crown land, or on the neighboring property. So you'd have to go through that due diligence prior to even being able to implement the bylaw in that regard. So it will really form a piece of that. And in the interim, we'll just continue as is, which hasn't been actively or proactively in enforcing the guidelines within the bylaw. It's been more from an educational approach. The great thing in many instances is because many of the lake associations are small communities, if there's an issue, oftentimes people are able to sort it out between them, or with simple conversations, you're able to identify, you know, whose the issue is. So we'll continue that way. And after we develop the framework, then look at the bylaw.
Yeah, because they do speak to each other, Jen, you're right. And it's a bit chicken and egg. One will lead into the other, which will lead back to the other. And yeah, so we've got some very interesting and very big conversations ahead. So Madam CAO, is there anything else you think you guys need from us, or Chris says he's fine? Are you fine?
I am, yes, thank you. The only thing that I would like to just remind council is that the asset management plan, as we bring those projects forward, it's a flexible document and it remains a living document essentially. So staff, as they look at projects, if there is a project or in Chris's case, a landing that needs attention ahead of one that's scheduled, he will be bringing that forward to council and, and the budget considerations along with it. So staff have that document and will be looking forward with it. So they don't just look at 1 year and don't look beyond. They will definitely be doing that, the same as each department will be doing. So.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, if there's nothing further on this, then I would like a mover and a seconder to receive this report. Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of PRT 2320 submitted by Chris Card dated December 10th, 2020 regarding docks and landings. And that council directs staff to proceed with option 3 as outlined within this report. And further, the council concurs with the staff recommendation regarding the bylaw review as outlined within this report.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next up, Public Works business. So we'll bring in Mr. Thorne.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Adam, and thank you for lighting up the room as you are again this year. Sean is dressed in all black today. He's in his usual Mr. Cole outfit, lump of coal. So we have Mr. Festive and Mr. Lump of Coal, and so I can share that picture out to council. We have, yes, the Grinch and the lump of coal beside the Christmas tree. A couple of items for you. The first one is unhappy news for us, but happy news for you. So you're first. You're leaving us.
Yes, unfortunately I am. I just wanted to say that it has been a pleasure working with Algonquin Highlands. Over the past 10 years, I have learned so much and have grown so much, and it's been a great team that's helped me do that. I'm very proud to be part of this team, and I can never say enough good things about Algonquin Highlands. I am very, very proud to be here, and like my letter says, it's more of a strategic move for me, getting me back to roads and equipment and fleet and things of that nature. So it's more of a passion I have that I'm trying to get back to. So again, I can never say enough good things about Algonquin Highlands. I've bled white and green for the last 10 years, and it'll never leave. So I'm proud to say that I'm not leaving the county. I'm just going down the road. I'm only 15-20 minutes away if anyone needs anything, and I'm always willing to help out. So on to something new and different. And I would just, again, I can't thank everyone on the screen and everyone in the office, everyone that's been out on the road that's helped me over the years. It's been an amazing experience.
Thank you for those very kind words. And it makes sense. I mean, I can't say any of us are probably very happy that you're leaving, but certainly respect that you want to get back to what you love, which is roads. We went through an org review, and the township is growing, and we keep talking about changes and progress, and it's not the same sort of community it used to be, and the portfolio of the operations manager is far bigger, and it's probably going to get bigger. And if your heart is with roads, and it makes sense that this role doesn't fit anymore, and I'm just glad that you've been able to see that. To follow your heart and your passion, and take a position that is what you really want to do. So you and I have spoken in private. So I would just say that on behalf of Algonquin Highlands, thank you for everything that you've brought, including your amazing decor in your office and your outfits. And just best of luck with moving back into a roads only portfolio, and we will miss you for many reasons.
Thank you.
And I know somebody else is going to want to say something, and I see, there you go, I was right. Deputy Mayor Danielson's hand is in the air.
Well, I was grateful to have a reason to have to call Adam and have a talk with him, and I just I want to echo everything that Carol said. You have been a real asset for us, and but I'm happy to see that you're moving on to something that is your passion. My question is, does Minden Hills know that you come with a wardrobe?
It's actually funny you said that. I messaged the director of public works this morning in Minden, and I sent him the picture that we took this morning with the environmental coordinator, because she's wonderfully dressed this morning in very festive wear. And I said, I hope you're ready for this, because it's coming. So, it's me. It's who I am. It's the personality I have. I like to make everyone smile and work hard and look good doing it. So I think I've been able to fulfill that. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, thank you very much. Does any other member of council want to say anything, or Councillor Dayu?
I obviously just want to echo my sorrow and my thanks that we're losing you, and that's a loss to us. But I'm so glad you're following your passion. But I also have to say I'm very glad that you are going only down to Minden Hills. The true loss would be if you left the community completely. You and your family are a really big part of this community, and we would be devastated to see you go entirely. And this way, we're going to see your face at the Christmas tree lighting. We'll see your face at the at the skating rinks and at and all the other wonderful community events that we have going on. And so it's great to know that you're still remaining part of us, even if your employment is taking you elsewhere.
Thank you.
May I have a mover and a seconder to receive Mr. Thorne's resignation letter? Nobody wants to put their hand. Councillor Berry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council acknowledge with regret the resignation of Adam Thorne as operation manager for the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? You have to put your hands up. That is carried. Okay, back to business. Next up is just the fuel report. Is there anything that we can't live without knowing on that?
No, just to note that there was quite an increase for Hydro One fuel over the past month, and I'm sure we all know why that was, that large storm that came through. So everybody worked really hard. I know the crews for Hydro were flying in and out quite regularly. So just the increase on fuel sales for Hydro is just a point of note.
Yeah, we say that all the time, that because of those storms, so we benefit when other people struggle, which is a bit of a dichotomy there, that fuel sales go up when something strikes that needs more work done. So any questions of council on that report? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? It's very Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report AP 1220 regarding November 2020 fuel usage submitted by Steve Dewey dated December 10th, 2020.
All in favor? That's carried. Next up is just a monthly activity report. Lots going on like everybody else.
Yeah, it's always busy in public works. Something that I did want to make note of here was a joint project that we did with the county and surrounding municipalities, with some joint training. It was nice to be able to get that squeezed in before too much snow hit the ground on us, and we were able to get quite a bit of plow training in for our staff members for the tandem plowing, sidewalk plowing, and pickup truck plowing. So that was a great joint effort for all the municipalities in the county. And then our CPR training was provided by a local firefighter, which was great to also get somebody involved there in the community. Other than that, no, it's pretty regular for this time of year, getting us transitioned over into more of the winter operations and dealing with the soft roads and the snow plowing and things like that, trying to get in the groove. So no, everything's been great.
Good, thank you. Are there any questions of council on the activity report? May I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 5520 regarding monthly activities submitted by Adam Thorne and dated December 10th, 2020.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the last report, I'm sorry, I didn't ask the question. Is Melissa coming in for this, or are you presenting it, Adam?
No, I can present it.
Okay, it's the e-waste collection.
Yeah, so the e-waste collection is something we currently have in place, and we currently run it with the Ontario Electronic Stewardship, so the OES. And right now, what we're looking at doing is just entering into an agreement with them. So they currently, we have 2 sites that collect electronic waste. We collect them in a large orange bin. You may have seen them at 2 of our landfill sites, Dorset and Maple. So this program started quite a few years ago, and it's been very successful for us. We do receive quite a bit of material that comes into those sea cans. So it's a nice dry storage. It's a good product that comes out of our landfill sites. It works really well for us. So this is the agreement that we have put in place, or we would like to have put in place.
Any questions or concerns from council on this agreement? Angie, were you going to say something there? Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And may I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report and move it forward? Councillor Barry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 5620 regarding electronic waste collection and recycling submitted by Melissa Murray dated December 10th, 2020, and the council directs staff to continue to provide EE collection services within the township waste management system, and that council directs staff to enter into an agreement for provision of electrical and electronic equipment collection services to the Electronic Products Recycling Association, the EPRA, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the agreement, with the final form and content being to the satisfaction of the operations manager and chief administrative officer.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Well, I guess that's the, oh no, we have one more. I was going to say that's the last one for you. Next up is the airport hangar lease. This is, council will recall, we've seen this a couple of times. It started in 2016, so we're just finalizing that now. So Adam, away you go, please.
Of course. So this change of this part of the lease agreement is for the payment. So what the change will allow is that the payment can be made in the same, or at the beginning of the year rather than throughout monthly, as the previous lease agreement spoke to. So this is just to help eliminate multiple invoices being issued at different times throughout the year.
Yeah, fair enough. Any questions? It's kind of a bit of housekeeping at the back end of the previous decision. Any thoughts, comments from council? Deputy Mayor Danielson. You're on mute.
Sorry. I'm assuming with any of the long-term tenants that we've got that we renew our leases?
That's correct. We renew our leases every year in January. And this just helps us because the way the lease was set up, this will just help clear that up so that the payment has to be due by the end of, before the end of February, I believe is what it says.
Okay, I see that. One other question is, if somebody has a demonstrated issue, is there an opportunity for arrangements to be made for other payment schedules?
Sorry, are you referring to like if somebody can't make the entire payment at the due date, that we could make arrangements to put in some kind of a payment plan? Is that what you're kind of referring to?
Yes.
Angie, maybe you might be able to speak to that a little better than I would be able to.
Currently, that's not included in the lease, but if there was a situation that was extenuating, then that would need to come to council.
Okay, as long as there's that opportunity to deal with a, you know, if somebody who's been with us for a long time. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on that? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to move this along? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 5720 regarding revised hangar lease agreement submitted by Adam Thorne dated December 10th, 2020, and that council approves the recommended changes and directs the bylaw be tabled to adopt the revised lease agreement, authorize the execution of lease agreements, and to ratify previous lease agreements executed by the mayor and clerk.
All in favor of that? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. So long, farewell. Merry Christmas and good luck.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Next up is fire services business, and we'll bring in the fire chief with his dreary news. Shouldn't be laughing. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
Following on the heels of Adam, you're also sharing some news publicly today. Did you want to tell us your news?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I said to tell us your news. You are you're going back home. You're leaving us and going back home.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
So first up is your resignation. You're going back home.
Yeah, no, and I'd like to thank council very much for the opportunity I had here this year. I want you to know this was a very difficult decision. I really enjoyed working here. I enjoyed working with the firefighters. Obviously, this was a very challenging year, and it was great to work with all the staff here. Very proud of what we accomplished this year. And but yes, unfortunately, I need to prioritize my family with everything that's going on in the world and return back to Ottawa.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You know, and it's you say it's an interesting year, and within weeks of joining us, the pandemic hit, and I think it was months before you even met most of the firefighters. You were immediately plunged into being the CEMC and managing all of that. And I don't think since the day you started you had a normal day of fire chiefing, and so it's understandable. And I'm sure that living apart from your family and your kids has been difficult, and that they've chosen to stay put right now, and your decision to be with them is absolutely the right one and fully understandable. So as much as we're sorry to lose you, you should be at home where you belong with your family. So I would like to thank you for the achievements that you have made in the time and your leadership in the EOC and acting as CEMC through the pandemic, and just wish you all the best in whatever you're going to seek next.
Well, thank you.
So always very difficult. Any thoughts from council? Last comments. Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive with regret the fire chief's resignation? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge with regret the resignation of Jonathan Wilker as fire chief for the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And so next up for you is monthly report.
Yeah, so there's just two really positive things on there I'd just like to highlight. One is that we completed the selection for the 2 vacant spots at Station 80 and Station 70. So the successful candidates were Bunny Lemereau and Robert Sargent, and they're going to be a great addition to the fire leadership team along with District Chief Flynn. So I think you're going to be in really good hands there for the foreseeable future. The other thing of note is that in November, we completed the testing for firefighter level 1 and 2 with the county, all the county recruits. We held it here at Station 80. This is actually even though this is a minimum standard, it's a very significant accomplishment. And I'd like to congratulate our admin, Dawn, for all the work that she's put in. All the relationships that she's made over the years, and CJ for all the work that he's done. This is a real challenge for all municipalities in Ontario right now, big and small. So it's really nice to see that we're ahead of the game and we're moving forward in the right direction.
Yeah, that's good news, and thank you for navigating us through that. That's great. Other questions?
Sorry, yeah, I really sorry. Yeah, I don't want to take any credit for that. It really has been. the training officer and Don. They've done the lion's share of the work before I got here, and it's just great to see that it keeps moving forward.
Well then, thank you to CJ and Firedon. May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor, were you going to say something, or were you moving?
I just had a question. I'm really pleased to see that we've got these district chief appointments in place. I think that that's been important. But one of the things that has concerned me from time to time is the fact that we don't actually have someone who's identified as a acting chief or a deputy chief. If something happens with our fire chief, becomes ill, or there's some circumstance where they can't perform their duties, where does that fall? Like who's in charge? And I guess that's concerned me for a while. And it's not that I want to create a full-time deputy fire chief's position, but it just seems to me that we need to have someone identified clearly to be the guy in charge.
Or the gal.
Or the gal.
The person in charge.
Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor, definitely we need to work on succession planning. Obviously, hopefully the new chief will that's something that they will work on. But we should be at the point where any three of these district chiefs can step in, either an emergency basis or just to cover a weekend away or vacation.
Yeah, that's something, Liz, that we can move forward. We've always said that since implementing the position of a full-time chief, each of those chiefs has put their own stamp on the role and moved the department forward in some way. And it's always just a continual path of progress. And so we'll get there. We'll just keep looking for different and more. So Deputy Barry, Councillor Barry.
Hi, I just wondered, an annual tradition is the award ceremony for the fire department. I just wonder, has there been any plans for an alternative ceremony or celebration to give it?
No, you know what? Sorry, through you, Mayor. We definitely, we're just taking these things day by day, and yeah, I hope that in the new year we can definitely find a way to do some sort of ceremony. But I mean, part of it was we did cancel it this year, and we were hoping by now we'd be able to get together or soon. But yeah, we'll have to look at different solutions for that. And I agree with you. That is a very important that we recognize milestones and achievements throughout the year. And retirements too. That's the other thing. We had some retirements this year, and but I want to make sure we do that right also too.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that. Did I have a mover and a seconder yet? How far did we get? No. May I have a mover and a seconder for the fire chief's report? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that Council acknowledge receipt of fire services report FD 1620 regarding monthly activities submitted by Jonathan Wilter dated December 10th, 2020. And that Council accepts the promotions of Julian Bunny Lamoureux, Station 70, and Rob Sargent, Station 80 to District Chief.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Good luck, Godspeed, farewell, and all of that.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. How would we like a little break? Yes, nod. It is almost 1:45. Can we come back at 5 to? So we'll see you back here at 5 to 11. Thank you. Yeah. 2-minute warning.
Well,
Carol, you're not in a new hat.
I know. Oh, We are back live and reconvened. Thank you very much. Up next, number 12 is finance business. I believe Jeannie is coming in. Hello, Madam Treasurer.
Good morning, everyone.
Three things for you. First up is the accounts payable. I'll just ask if council has any questions of Jeannie on any of the accounts. Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortly, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the December 10th, 2020 account summary in the total amount of $2,833,469 and hereby approves payment of same.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up, Jeannie, is just a couple of tax write-offs for some demolitions.
Correct.
Any questions from council on that? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that Council acknowledge receipt of report TT 18-2020 regarding tax write-offs submitted by Sarah Hudson and dated November 25th, 2020. And the Council hereby approves the noted tax write-offs under Section 357 of the Municipal Act for taxes in the amount of $564.72.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And the fees and charges bylaw, the bylaw itself will be at the end, but is there anything you want to say about this, Jeannie?
I don't have anything further to say. We've discussed it along the way.
Okay, may I have a, is there a report or it's just the bylaw?
It's just the bylaw.
Just the bylaw. Okay, so we'll see it at the end. Anything else from you, Jeannie?
Nothing formal other than just wish you all a Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year. And I guess we'll see you on Zoom in January. But it was nice to see a couple of you in person last night at the lighting. So take care, everyone.
Thank you for those kind words. We will move on to administration business. The first piece up is the revised performance evaluation, just some housekeeping from our previous conversation. I don't know, Madam CAO, if you want to say anything about that.
There's really not much to say. It's just coming back. Council had adopted the revised form, and when we used it this fall, council had directed that there be some additional revisions. So that's just coming back for approval.
Anything from council on this? I mean, the revisions were ours. So Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I think the form looks good. I know that that one of the things that I mentioned to the mayor was the form looked good in the first place, but when we went to answering the questions, we found that, that's when we found some of the challenges, and I'm just wondering if the same thing will happen the next time. But I think we're better prepared now. I think it was a good process for us to go through.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're right, because we've implemented an entirely new process. So it's a bit foreign to us. We did the first half of it, and next year at this time, we'll see the whole thing in its whole cycle. Angie, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to point out to council as well that the one that's on the agenda is in PDF format. The one that council fills out will not be. So you will actually see the drop downs when you get that document.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept the revisions? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report CAO 1620 regarding the revised CAO performance evaluation form submitted by Angie Burden dated December 10th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report and adopts a new CAO performance evaluation form as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next up is the heritage, the conservation easement at the Frost Center. So there's going to be a document to sign, but Madam CAO, you want to speak to that?
I can, yes, thank you. And again, this is coming back from the last meeting where council signed the agreement of purchase and sale to purchase the Trails Office at the Frost Center. One of the things that was mentioned in that report is that we have to sign a heritage conservation easement agreement. That wasn't finalized at that point, but it is now, and it's here for council's approval and authorization to sign.
Great, and an interesting document. I love the heritage on it. And I have to say, I'm certainly glad to land here today. It's been a long road that we've been pushing and picking away at behind the scenes for a number of years. And thank you to you, Angie, for staying on top of it. How many times did I say to you in the last number, where are we on that? Where are we on that? So it's good. I guess you could say it's one more sad day in the demise of the Frost Center, but it's a good day for heritage preservation, and I'm okay with that. So, and nice to see the whole more details on the history of the land as well. So, anything else from council on the conservation easement? Great. May I have we don't need to move in a seconder, do we?
Yeah, just to receive it.
Just to receive it. Okay. Mover and a seconder to receive. Councillor Barry, Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved, Council receives the Heritage Conservation Easement Agreement and directs a bylaw be tabled authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the said agreement.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And the meeting schedule, which is the clerk's report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Before Council is the proposed 2021 meeting schedule. As per previous years, there are the meetings are held the first and third Thursdays of each month, with the exception of January. We're proposing the summer months again being reduced to one, being June, July, and August, as well as the December 9th one meeting, the second Thursday, which is set by policy. With note, the August meeting, as opposed to being the third Thursday of the month, is being proposed on the second Thursday, which is the 12th, due to AMO conference, whether it be in person or Zoom, is proposed to be held August 15th to 18th. So we're just moving the council meeting up as we did this year.
Okay, any conflicts, thoughts from council? Of course, I will take the opportunity to ask if anybody wants to reconsider one meeting a month year round. I don't think I'm going to win that battle, she said, smiling. Okay, could I have a mover and I'm not going to let it go. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report that cements our dates for next year? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Short-Reed.
By Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report CO 1220 regarding the 2021 council meeting schedule submitted by Dawn Newhook dated December 10th, 2020. And the council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report and sets the following council meeting dates on the following Thursdays in 2021. January 21st, February 4th and 18th, March 4th and 18th, April 1st and 15th, May 6th and 20th, June 17th, July 15th, August 12th, September 2nd, 16th, October 7th and 21st, November 4th and 18th, and December 9th set by policy.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up is planning. So we'll bring in Mr. O'Callaghan or Mr. Lump of Coal. There he is. Good morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Good morning.
Quite a number of items for you. First up is a proposed purchase of Crown land.
Yes, so this is a bit of a unique application in that there's a cottage that's been developed on a piece of property that's owned by the Crown. So on the plan that I've attached to my report, it outlines which parcel of property this applicant actually owns, being across Highway 35. And the cottage was constructed on a parcel outlined in orange on the map attached to my report. So what they've done is they've applied to the ministry to purchase this Crown land that their cottage currently occupies. Part of that process is the township providing comments. So what I'm recommending is that we do support them to purchase this Crown parcel with a few conditions attached to that. One being the purchase of the shore road allowance that's in front of this property, as well as a merger agreement being entered into so that the parcel of land that is currently privately owned would be attached on title with this Crown parcel that's being proposed to be purchased. If there are any questions, though, I'd be happy to answer.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I have to be honest, when I looked at the diagram against your report, I was confused about the portion that was on the other side of the highway. I'm just wondering if there is any idea that the Crown would accept our conditions? Or can we ask for conditions and they just ignore them?
I mean, it is up to the Crown to approve whether or not to sell this portion of land. So it's my understanding they could not require these conditions be included. I can't see a reason why they wouldn't though. But I suppose that would be up to them to decide.
I found it very interesting to think that somebody would own a piece of property on the other side of the highway and then just decide to build on the waterfront. I hope that that's not the practice for too many people.
I think actually there's some history to this parcel of land. My understanding is there was some expropriation done back when the highway was realigned. So I think that's how it became a Crown parcel of land.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other questions or thoughts from members of council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8120 regarding the proposed purchase of Crown land adjacent to property located at part of Lot 10, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Saskatchewan Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 10th, 2020, and that the council holds no objection to the proposed sale of the subject Crown land to the owner of 1015 Three Brothers Drive, subject to the following conditions. 1, the shore road allowance adjacent to the subject lands being closed following the transfer of Crown land to private ownership. 2, the lands entering into a merger agreement with Roll 1015 Three Brothers Drive. And 3, confirmation be provided from a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the building department that an adequate septic system can be constructed on the subject lands.
All in favor? Oh, Lisa Berry, you have a question?
Just to be clear, is there any way that this can end up as a severance where they continue to stay on the orange section and then build on 10 on the highway section?
So what I'm proposing is that the lands enter into a merger agreement for purposes under the Planning Act, which would mean that those lots are considered a single lot, so they could only have that one development being on the waterfront side.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Madam CAO.
I just wanted to add though, Sean, that if the Crown does decide, as Deputy Mayor Danielson said, decide not to include our conditions, it is very possible then that there will be 2 parcels created.
Yes, a good point.
Lisa Berry.
Sorry, I should know this answer, but is Saskatchewan Lake at capacity?
Sorry, I should know off the top of my head. I can verify.
I don't think so.
Let's check the official plan.
It's relative.
Madam CAO.
The reality is that the construction on the waterfront is there already, so the impact is there.
Yes, that's true. It's not listed as being an at capacity lake.
Well, still good to know.
Yep.
Okay, anything else on this one? Did I get as far as a mover to seconder?
Yes, I have read it. Would you like me to read it again?
Yeah, we'll have the resolution again. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8120 regarding the proposed purchase of Crown land adjacent to property located at part of Lot 10, Concession 11, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Saskatchewan Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 10th, 2020. The council holds no objection to the proposed sale of the subject Crown lands to the owner of 1015 Three Brothers Drive, subject to the following conditions. 1, the shore road allowance adjacent to the subject lands being closed following the transfer of Crown land to private ownership. 3, the lands entering into a merger agreement with Rural 1015 Three Brothers Drive. And 3, confirmation be provided from a qualified professional to the satisfaction of the building department that an adequate septic system can be constructed on the subject lands.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up for you, Sean, is another Crown land purchase on Red Pine.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I mean, I haven't come across these applications before, but to have two in the same month is a little odd, but this one is also unique. The applicant started with an application to close the shore road allowance, and upon completing the survey, it was discovered a strip of Crown land runs between their property and the shore road allowance, which means they're no longer directly adjacent to that shore road allowance and would need to first purchase the Crown land before being able to proceed with the shore road purchase. So I'm recommending that the Crown does sell this parcel of land to the applicant so that they can proceed with that purchase.
Any questions, comments from the council? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Barry, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8220 regarding the proposed purchase of Crown land adjacent to property located at part of Lot 6, Concession 3, Geographic Township of Sherburne, Red Pine Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 10th, 2020, and that council holds no objection to the proposed sale of the subject Crown land to the owner of 11855 Red Pine Lake, Water WAO, subject to the following conditions. 1, the shore road allowance adjacent to the subject lands being closed following the transfer of Crown land to private ownership.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up, a proposed shore road closing allowance for DeVries. This is coming back.
Yes, so this is the bylaw to close the shore road allowance in front of this property on Boshkung Lake. No objections were received or easements required, and staff are recommending approval of the bylaw as presented.
I'll be happy to get this finished. Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Short-Reed.
By Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8320 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part lot 10, concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, DeVries, Boshman Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 10th, 2020. And the council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Same again, coming back for Chikrezi on Cushog Lake.
Yes, another bylaw for the shore road allowance. Once again, no objections were received or easements required, and staff are recommending approval of the bylaw.
Questions, comments from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short-Reed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8420 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part lot 2, concession 10, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Chikrezi, Cushog Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 10th, 2020, and that council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in said report and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up is Hay on Fletcher Lake, and this is a deeming bylaw.
Yes, so this is a bylaw to close the shore road allowance as well as a deeming bylaw. Just that additional step is required because the lot was a lot on a plan of subdivision, so the deeming bylaw will essentially allow the shore road allowance lands to merge with the original parcel of land. No objections were received and staff are recommending approval of both bylaws.
Any questions from council? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of report PL 8520 regarding the proposed shore road allowance closing fronting property located at part of lot 31 concession 6, geographic township of McClintock, Hay, Fletcher Lake, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated December 10th, 2020, and that council deems the said shore road allowance to be surplus and concurs with the recommendation made in the said report, and directs a bylaw to stop up, close, and obey the said shore road allowance be tabled for further consideration, and that council directs a deeming bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is a license of application. A license of occupation upon Kawagama.
Yes, so the applicant here is proposing to cross a municipal-owned road allowance in order to have land access to their property, which is currently considered a water access only parcel of land. They are currently going through a severance process right now, which was presented to council previously this year. Staff are recommending approval of the license of occupation so that they can have that land access to their property.
Sean, what road goes in there? Because I don't see it on the map.
That is, yeah, it's not shown on the road. I believe it's North Creek.
Yeah, not that it really matters. It's just that I didn't see the road on the map and I neglected to go and look it up myself. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's North Creek. I can confirm that.
I think maybe Councillor Dayu is going to do that for us. Councillor Dayu.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I cannot confirm off the top of my head the name of the road. I did want to confirm for the record, Sean, if you kindly would, what we discussed on the phone a few days ago, that this application for use will in no way impinge the snowmobile use throughout the winter, because I know that's really important to folks using that space through the Narrows.
Yes, my understanding is the snowmobile trail is more towards the point of the piece of property where the water is, and not on this section of road allowance where they're proposing to cross. So it's my understanding it will have no impact on that snowmobile access.
Thank you.
And it is North Creek Drive, which ends there.
Okay, thank you. And I would like clarification. I think I know the answer, that this license of occupation is just to allow the property owner to cross the road allowance, but in no way gives them governance over that piece. So they can't prevent anybody from getting through there, which I think is a different question than Councillor Dayu was asking. So that still remains a road allowance that could be used by the public.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anything further from council on this license of occupation? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be resolved, council acknowledge receipt of planner's report PL 8620 related to the license of occupation road allowance between part of lot 25 concession 2 and part of lot 26 concession 2. Geographic Township of McClintock, 2697507 Ontario Inc., submitted by Sean O'Callaghan and dated December 10th, 2020, and the council approves a request made by Wayne Simpson and Associates on behalf of 2697507 Ontario Inc. to utilize a municipal road allowance between part of lot 25 concession 2 and part of lot 26 concession 2, geographic township of McClintock, for a distance of approximately 66 feet, and that any and all improvements to the original allowance for road as described above are the sole responsibility of the licensee, and the Township of Algonquin Highlands assumes no liability, responsibility, or obligation whatsoever to construct and or maintain and or repair the said road allowance, and that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the license of occupation agreement on behalf of the Township of Algonquin Highlands.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. We're into a couple of applications now. The first one is on Skin Lake, named Abbott.
Yes, so this is the application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. There is currently some development that does encroach onto the shore road allowance, but other than that, it seems like a fairly straightforward application, and would recommend they proceed through the regular steps to close that shore road allowance.
Questions, concerns from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at concession 7, part lot 19, geographic township of McClintock, Skin Lake, Abbott, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Next up is, again, a closing application for Barnes on Quagama.
Yes, another application to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. They are looking at constructing a permanent dock, which would require the shore road allowance to be purchased prior to being able to construct that. But I would recommend they proceed through the regular steps to close the shore road allowance.
Questions or thoughts from council? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at concession 2, part lot 26, geographic township of McClintock, Quagama Lake, Barnes, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Road closing allowance application, Crosby on Halls Lake.
Yes, another application to close this shore road allowance. There are some structures that currently encroach on the shore road allowance, and they are proposing to construct a new boathouse. I have not seen plans for that yet, but it would obviously need to comply with the zoning bylaw before that would be permitted. But I would recommend they proceed through the regular steps to close this shore road allowance.
Sean, are they replacing an existing boathouse or building a brand new one? I didn't think you could build new boathouses.
It would need to be a dry land boathouse if they're constructing one in this area.
Okay. Any questions from council? Councillor Barry.
I did look this one up in the OP as it being on a lake at capacity. So my question is it right now where we would ask for anything for as far as like a impact study or consultation with MNRF or the Ministry of Environment?
We haven't generally done something like that for a shore road allowance application, as it is already a developed lot. If they were severing the lot or looking for some sort of other planning approval that could potentially further impact the water, then that would be where we would request something like that.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Barry?
Yes.
You're not sounding very convincing on that, but I'll circle back. Are there any other questions on this application? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Short-Reed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up, close, and convey shore road allowance fronting property located at concession 7, lot 16, geographic township of Stanhope, Halls Lake, Crosby, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Dayu.
Is that not it for, no, sorry, there is one more. After the next application, I have one comment that I'd like to make as well.
Okay, the last application is Finley on Lower Welch.
Yes, so another application here to close this shore road allowance. Most of the buildings are off of the shore road allowance. There's a dock and a pathway that currently encroach onto it, but I am recommending that they proceed through the regular steps to close that shore road allowance.
Questions from council? Seeing none, may I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Short-Reed. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dayu, thank you.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Diu. Be it resolved, council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop up closing of the shoreline road allowance fronting property located at concession 8, part lot 15, Lower Welch Lake, geographic township of Stanhope, Finley, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Councillor Diu, you had something you wanted to?
Yes, with your permission, Madam Mayor, much has been said about the humble lump of coal today, and I do want to remind us all that coal is arguably one of the principal drivers of the Industrial Revolution. So where would we be without the humble lump of coal? Merry Christmas, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's exactly what I was going for. So.
Good man, good man. That's good. Thank you for that. That's it for you, Sean. So we will bid you adieu and Merry Christmas.
Yes, thank you. Merry Christmas to everyone as well.
Next up is our external boards, of which there are very, very few. I just wanted to circle back with the warden on if there's anything for EORN.
I don't know that there's anything new beyond what I said at the last meeting. I think that EORN is feverishly working with their chosen proponent, but while they're in negotiations with the proponent, they're not prepared yet to say who that might be. But you know, there's exciting news. There's progress. Albeit it takes a long time and it'll be a while before we see it. We will see construction start in the spring for the Selgut project, and hopefully that will resolve some issues beyond just cell phone coverage.
Thank you for that. I asked to have added the next item, which I think is going to remain a standing item. The Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee is an outcome of the Flood Advisors Report, which circulated a year or so ago. And so I was invited to that meeting, and the reason, just to recap, the reason why we get invited to that is the heads of council in all the municipalities in that watershed have participated in this process. And the top half of Algonquin Highlands, of course, flows to the west, and below Dorset, it flows to the south. So I was on that meeting with, Lake of Bays, Muskoka Lakes, Gravenhurst, Bracebridge, a number of the hydro, the energy providers were there because they have a number of dams. It was hosted by the MNRF. Minister Yakubuski he introduced the call and made some opening remarks about the importance of working on flooding being a top priority for his government, and just sort of outlining that this had come from the Special Advisors Report, which we submitted, Haliburton County submitted quite a lengthy report, made quite a lengthy submission into that Special Advisors Report process, and in fact was named a couple of times in the outcomes. So, and one of them being around communication. So they were talking about improving communication. So right now, from our own MNRF and TSW friends, in the springtime when there's flooding or potential flooding, we are on a daily conference call with many participants that talk about the watershed, and so that municipalities and their operations can prepare for what's coming and keep in touch with each other. So really strong communications. We've had that in place for years. They don't have the same thing over in that side. So the ministry person took us through a slide deck and I did ask Mr. Ted Spence from CEWF, who was my co-chair on the Upper Trent Watershed Management Partnership, to be my, quote, technical advisor on that call, just because of the role those folks have played in moving our relationships around integrated water management and flooding forward. So that was very interesting, but we were taken through a slide deck that for us was a bit preliminary, because we are in this watershed a little more advanced than the folks in Muskoka, and they're trying to find a way to catch up with communications and how things need to happen over there. So interesting going forward. It does intend to meet every quarter. I'm not sure exactly. It's a bit flexible at the moment. And the first meeting was just to look at the terms of reference, which did include some of that flexibility. And it's interesting that it does require quite an extensive knowledge of how it all works. So they did go through a slide deck of exactly how it works, which is very similar to like how the decisions are made with inflows and outflows, what dam levels are going to be set, who needs the water, why, where, and when. So just a bit of a heads up that we've been invited to participate on that, and it's really just a heads up that that's going on. It will somehow be tied into the Muskoka Watershed Advisory Committee, which I have lovingly referred to as the Muskoka Millions Group. So it's all connected to Muskoka and allowing them to better manage their watershed. And stay tuned on it, because it's actually, that watershed report has come out as well as the flood advisories report from last year, and there's a lot of very large projects there. So I did speak extensively about this at our Upper Trent Management Partnership meeting the other day, and we're looking at maybe do a little more lobbying so that Haliburton can get the voice it deserves in terms of the work that it's been done for its own watershed management, the LIDAR project, multiple partnerships, and that kind of thing. So just a heads up we're on a new committee, and we'll see where it goes. The communications committee is one of the first outcomes from the flood advisory report, and I think we'll just all have to stay tuned for what might be coming in the future from that report and from both these reports actually. Are there any questions from anybody on that? It's a lot of techno speak. I don't know if did I ask for a resolution to appoint, or we're just, no, okay. All right, so that's just your update on that. General business, we have a couple of items. We have a request for support from Charles E. White, speaking of water, flooding, and the LIDAR project. Who is speaking to this? Are you speaking to this, Madam Clerk?
The request came in from Charles looking for council support in submitting for the funding to do the hydraulic and hydrologic models for the regulatory floodline of Gull and Burnt River systems.
Yeah, and that we did. Charles, did speak about this at the Upper Trent meeting the other day. That if we can get this modeling done for both the Gull and the Burnt, it will stand us in good stead in that partnership and development of processes going forward in terms of continuing to assess and mitigate and plan for flooding and its various repercussions. So Charles is just looking for support. I don't know if there's any questions, or we can just go straight to a mover and a seconder for moving this county request forward to continue that big project. Seeing no hands for questions, I will ask for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands supports the County of Haliburton application made under the National Disaster Mitigation Program Funding Intake 2020 to be used for hydraulic and hydrologic models, determination of the regulatory flood line of the Gull River and Burnt River systems, risk assessments, flood mapping, mitigation planning, and prevention.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next up is the final report of the service delivery review, which is making the rounds to all the municipal tables. And I will ask Deputy Mayor Danielson, who is the warden at the moment, to just take us through sort of what it is and what next steps are. I mean, I think everybody was on the presentation, so I don't know if there's anything that you want to add.
No, I mean, we were all in on the presentation. I was glad to see excellent representation from Algonquin Highlands. Obviously this is going to be a long project with a lot of work and money attached to it. There will be discussions about committees that need to be established and how recommendations will be brought forward and acted upon. I think that to start with, County Council will have a discussion about how they see it sort of fanning out and working. But I just think that this should probably become a standing item on our agenda going forward, because, you know, so much of it impacts all of our operations, and you know, we'll need to have input into every aspect of it.
Yeah, and we can, when those first couple of meetings happen, that's something that we'll find out. If it's going to be a standing item on lower tiers, it should be a standing item on all of them. So maybe take that. Have you guys had that discussion internally at the county about that? Or
we have discussed the fact that it should become a standing item, you know, on our agenda. And I would hope that we would get agreement that it would remain a standing item on all of the lower tiers agendas, but you know, that has from time to time been a challenge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you going to keep talking?
I honestly, at this point in time, I don't know what more to say, except that, you know, that more will follow. And to just again thank Angie for her part in this. It's been an awful lot of work for all of the CAOs, and will continue to be so for them and for our department heads as we work through the intricacies of this, and how it will best work for all of us. I do see that I think in some cases the best opportunity is for us all to work together in a partnership, but there are opportunities for there to be kind of side partnerships for municipalities that are adjacent to each other. You know, I guess it just depends on the types of service that's being offered by our neighbors, and whether we can find room to cooperate, consolidate, streamline, you know, save money, or offer a better service. More to come.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Dayu.
Just wanted to extend my thanks to the warden and to all of our colleagues at county for bringing the lower tiers in on that presentation. That was really fabulous. It took a lengthy report and really humanized it and contextualized it for those of us who haven't been part of that conversation. And it's a report that does impact all of us. It impacts councils, it impacts staff, it impacts all of our constituents. And I know that there were actually a number of constituents who were listening in, and who got in touch later to say that they also really valued seeing what the projections might be for the future. So again, my thanks for bringing the lower tiers in, and the general public. I think that was a worthy thing to do with great outcome.
Well, it was something that we had to do. I mean, it's a review that's been done on all of our behalf. It's not a county review. I mean, it's a county-wide review for all of the municipalities, and it was an interesting process to sort out how to bring everybody in, allow the public to watch, and you know, I think it went really well. And just as a reminder, if there are areas where there's lack of clarity, or you've got some questions, you know, they can all be submitted through Angie or Mike to the consultants, and we'll get responses.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. May I have a mover and a seconder to receive that report? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council receives the Haliburton Municipality Service Delivery Review prepared by Strategy Corp for information.
All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Correspondence is next. Did anything get moved along?
Yes, Councillor Berry moved the correspondence from the Greater Sudbury on Bill 229.
Right, and Bill 229 has been passed, so there's no, I guess the only opposition, is there something more that you wanted to suggest around that?
Similar to the Municipal Elections Act, it had already been passed, but council supported the townships, supported their resolution, as well as just asked that the province consult with Ontario municipalities when proposing changes related to the matters. Would be a suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Berry, what would you like to do with that, seeing as the resolution that you initially supported is now moot because the bill has been passed. Would you like to send something forward just asking for better consultation going forward on matters such as this, or just leave it? What would you like to do?
No, I would still like to put something forward. I think it's obvious that there's been some disregard for the value that the conservation authorities have, and I think that it should be made note that we support the resolution that Sudbury put forward, or our own. Doesn't matter, but I do feel that even though it's been passed, I think the comment is still valued.
Certainly the number of resignations over that speaks volumes as well. So, so that's been moved, but it doesn't need a seconder. Would someone like to second that? Oh, I see Deputy Mayor Danielson's hand in the air.
Yep.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council supports resolution number 002-2020-272, passed by the Greater City of Sudbury regarding notice to withdraw from Schedule 6 Conservation Authorities Act from Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act. And that Council requests the province to consult with Ontario municipalities when proposing changes related to these matters. And further, the copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Jeff Urich, the Honourable Minister of Finance, Rod Phillips, and MPP Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock, Lori Scott.
You heard that, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. Next up is, I guess we're on straight to bylaws now.
We just received the correspondence.
Oh yes, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence listing? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that Council receives correspondence listing for a period of November 12th, 2020 to December 3rd, 2020 for information.
All in favor? It's carried, thank you. Where are we now? Bylaws. Hang on a second. You ready? Mover and seconder? Mover and seconder for adoption of the bylaws, please. Councillor Berry, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2020-104 to adopt comprehensive fees and charges for 2021. Bylaw 2020-105 to approve a revised hangar lease agreement. Bylaw 2020-106 to execute a heritage conservation easement agreement with Ontario Heritage Trust, Cross Center Trails office property. Bylaw 2020-107 to stop up, close, and convey a portion of Shore Road allowance located at Part Lot 10, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Washington Lake debris. Bylaw 2020-108 to stop and close up and convey a portion of Shore Road allowance located at Lot 2, Concession 10, Geographic Township of Stanhope, Couchard Lake, Secrezi. Bylaw 2020-109 to stop up, close, and convey a portion of the Short Road allowance fronting Lot 31, Concession 6, Geographic Township of McClintock, Fletcher Lake, Hay. Bylaw 2020-110 to deem parts of a registered plan not to be registered, Lot 14, 14A, 14B, Registered Plan 440, Geographic Township of McClintock, Hay. Bylaw 2020-111 to execute a license of occupation with 2697507 Ontario Inc. And Bylaw 2020-112 to execute an agreement with Electronic Products Recycling Association.
You've heard that, all in favor? That's carried, thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-113 being bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its December 10th, 2020 regular council meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried, thank you. And mover and a seconder for the adjournment for today. Nobody wants to go home? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved that the December 10th, 2020 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 11:45 a.m.
All in favor? That's carried. Great, thank you, everybody. And this is our last meeting of the year. Before the meeting, I was thinking that there was another one. scared staff half to death. Happy holidays, everybody. Be well, stay safe, hug your family close, and enjoy your time.
And to you.
Merry Christmas, Council.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
See you next year.
Merry Christmas.
Indeed.